Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Khalid al-Batish, an Islamic Jihad leader, has confirmed that Israel's policy of assassinations will not break the will and determination of the Palestinian people. This comes as thousands of Palestinians held a funeral procession for two Islamic Jihad leaders gunned down in Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces. Some observers believe that Israel is trying to stir chaos in the region by targeting Palestinians of all political backgrounds.
Khalid al-Batish, a senior leader of the Islamic Jihad, has condemned the Zionist assassination of two leaders of the Jerusalem Brigade, the Islamic Jihad military wing. This latest assassination came hours after Israel had killed three leaders of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. Mr. al-Batish had confirmed that these killings are a desperate attempt by Israel to weaken Palestinian self-esteem and break down their will.
The Zionist enemy is looking for a way to break the will of the Palestinian people in order to compel them to accept Sharon, Mufaz, and Elmar's initiatives. It is obvious that the Islamic Jihad is now the target. As long as there is an occupation, there will be resistance.
Amidst chants of revenge against Israel, tens of thousands of Palestinians held funeral processions for the two martyrs assassinated in Gaza. Meanwhile, a number of high-ranking Islamic Jihad leaders have confirmed that thousands of Palestinians are ready to carry out suicide operations in the heart of Israel. The Jerusalem Brigade has vowed to retaliate against these latest Israeli assassinations.
According to the Islamic Jihad Military Administration, there are nearly 2,000 male and 750 female would-be suicide bombers from the Jerusalem Brigade in the West Bank and Gaza. Right now, they are ready to blow themselves up in Tel Aviv. God willing, we will continue on the same course and path of the martyrs. This is our way and our life, and this is what we hope to accomplish, God willing.
According to observers, the escalation in the aggression against Palestinians is not a new Israeli policy. Israel is trying to break the will of the Palestinian people by continuing its aggressive and oppressive policy against them and their national problem. After the success of the Palestinian democratic elections, Israel escalated its campaign of target killings and assassinations against Palestinians.
Without a doubt, the Israeli escalation that is taking place now comes in the framework of its general policy, which is to continue targeting and assassinating Palestinian activists. The Israeli military message calls for more killings, more targets, and more assassinations, regardless which Palestinian faction is in power, whether Fatah, Hamas, or others.
Israel continues to execute and kill Palestinians in the streets in cold blood. According to observers, this campaign of assassinations is premeditated, targeting the entire region in order to derail the peace process. Meanwhile, Palestinian factions are vowing to retaliate against the Israeli occupation and to continue the resistance and the fight for freedom.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. ونبدأ النشر بهذا الخبر العاجل حيث
Peace be upon you. We begin with breaking news. At least two Palestinians were just recently martyred by an Israeli shelling of a civilian car in the area of Abu Safiya, east of Jabalia in the district of northern Gaza. With us on the phone, our correspondent, Adil Al-Zanoun from Gaza. Adil, hello. What happened?
عادل الزعنون من غزة. عادل مرحبا بك وما الذي حدث؟
نعم، الحصيلة هي شهيدان وثلاثة جرحى Yes, 2 people were murdered and 3 others were injured as a result of the latest assassination that was carried out by the Israeli occupation airplanes about 40 minutes ago. The martyrs, Hassan Asfour and Rami Hanouna, were members of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. They lived in Al-Jabalia refugee camp. Israeli planes launched 3 missiles that directly hit a civilian Hyundai car that was traveling on a main road east of the Beit Lahia. The martyrs, Asfour and Hanouna, died immediately when their bodies were torn into pieces at the site. Another injured person sustained serious wounds. Meanwhile, Israeli spy planes and helicopters are still hovering in the skies over Gaza and the northern strip until now.
Adil, how many people were injured?
3 of the injured were transferred to the Martyr Kamal Adwan Hospital in the northern Gaza Strip, as well as the 2 martyrs.
Adil, this is the 3rd military operation within the past 30 hours in the Gaza Strip, and specifically in the Gaza District. What is the atmosphere there after these series of operations?
الواضح أن قوات الاحتلال الإسرائيلي من خلال هذا التصعيد ووتيرة التصعيد في الاعتداءات وسيما مسألة الاغتيالات أنها ترمي.
It is clear that the Israeli forces, through this escalation and the intensity of this aggression, including the assassinations, keeps the area in a state of anxiety, thus entering into a new state of tension and deterioration. Many officials in the Palestinian Authority warned about this. Meanwhile, the Legislative Council is preparing for the new government, and the largest party, the Hamas movement, is also working to create a government as indicated by the consultations that are being conducted at the internal level within Hamas. It appears that Israel is aiming to make matters difficult for everyone and not give the Palestinians an opportunity to continue these political procedures, whether on the political or internal levels. In addition, this is part of Israel's continued policy of threats and assassinations, especially by the Israeli Occupation Defense Minister Shaul Mufaz.
إضافة إلى أن هذا ينسجم أو يتوازى مع استمرار التهديدات الإسرائيلية سيما من وزير جيش الاحتلال شاول مفاز باستمرار الاغتيالات.
Adil, according to the images we are seeing on Palestine TV, it appears that the area of the incident is a residential area.
نعم هذه المنطقة هي أيضا مأهولة بالسكان كما المنطقتين.
Yes, this area is inhabited by residents as well as the 2 other areas that were shelled yesterday, like the Zaytun and Tel El-Hawa neighborhoods. Both are residential areas. It appears that the occupation forces do not discriminate between civilians and those who are part of the military fronts. Neither do they discriminate between deserted and inhabited areas, where are residents and homes, like the area east of Beit Lahia, which was raided this evening.
Adil, this was an assassination that was carried out by air raids. Talk about mortar shell raids by Israeli military vehicles and tanks that are deployed along the northern and eastern borders with Gaza.
قبل حوالي ساعتين جددت مدفعية الاحتلال الإسرائيلي عمليات القصف تلك التي تستهدف.
Just about 2 hours ago, Israeli occupation vehicles renewed their shelling, targeting the east of Jabalia, east of Gaza City, and northeast Beit Hanun in the most northern part of the Gaza Strip. In the early morning, they launched more than 30 mortar shells towards these areas. There were no casualties, but there are damages to these areas. The Israeli occupation military vehicles did not hesitate to shell these areas.
المدفعية مدفعية الاحتلال الإسرائيلي عن مواصلة إطلاق القذائف.
أهلا بكم إلى المدار.
Senior Hamas leaders met in Cairo under the leadership of Khaled Mishal, the president of the political office of the movement. The objective of the meeting was to discuss and coordinate the formation of a new government, since Hamas has become the new majority in the Palestinian Legislative Council. While Hamas says that it is looking for the best possible way to form the new government, it faces many internal and foreign challenges. However, Hamas seems to be ready to deal with this new situation with realistic policies, as the movement puts it.
ما يوجد ظروفا جديدة تبدو حماس أنها تدركها وتستعد للتعامل معها بسياسات تصفها هي نفسها بأنها واقعية.
Senior Hamas leaders started preparing for the formation of a new government. Its senior leaders came from many different countries and started discussing their options. They are holding talks and consulting with one another as a way to reassure Palestinians that things will be okay and to send a message to the international community that they're aware of the demands they are facing in this new era.
We began this consultation in Egypt in order to reach the best possible proposal for the formation of the new Palestinian government that will have to take on the responsibility of running the affairs of the Palestinian people, both politically and internally.
وتبدو حماس بتحركها الداخلي ورغبتها المعلنة في التشاور مع باقي الفصائل.
Hamas's declared intention to consult with Palestinian factions and independent figures shows that it wants to establish a national unity government, despite the fact that it can form a government single-handedly since it enjoys the majority. This is due to the fact that the government knows that it is facing challenges and political pressures that it cannot take on without the support of other factions. Hamas wants to liberate Palestinian lands, fight corruption, establish security, and protect the economy. But it is facing strong pressure from Israel, the United States, and the European Union to give up their weapons and stop armed attacks on Israel in order to resume peace negotiations. Or else, Hamas will be responsible for losing foreign aid to the Palestinian Authority, which the movement will run in the near future. In addition, it has no choice but to deal with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, who has a different vision on how to deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Ehud Olmert, the acting Prime Minister of Israel, tried to stir division between Hamas and the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
وقد مضى إيهود أولمرت رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي المؤقت الاثنين في الضغط على الحركة من خلال المناورة لتعميق الخلاف بينها وبين.
It is not in Israel's interest to weaken the Palestinian President Abu Mazen. Mr. Abbas may not support Hamas, and Hamas may not be able to form the new government. We will exercise great caution and responsibility while dealing with the new Palestinian Authority. Meanwhile, we will support Palestinian blocs that call for the recognition for Israel's right to exist peacefully and within secure boundaries.
والقباب بالتعامل مع حماس ترفقه إسرائيل بالتصعيد العسكري. ولكن أيضا بوعد لعباس بإبقاء نافذة مفتوحة للحوار معه بعدما.
Amidst an Israeli military escalation, Israel continues to reject negotiating with Hamas. However, it has not ruled out negotiations with the Palestinian President Abu Mazen, especially since President Abbas has sent 2 envoys to Israel confirming that he will oversee future talks between the two sides despite Hamas's recent victory. This new status quo has forced Hamas and Abbas to find a common ground in future talks with Israel. Hamas's leaders have confirmed that there is no way out of negotiating with Israel since it exists. However, it will not recognize Israel until Tel Aviv gives the Palestinian people all their legitimate rights. Hamas's precondition can be used by Abbas to get more concessions from Israel, and this explains why he has not pressured Hamas to recognize the Hebrew state. Hamas has confirmed that it is willing to negotiate a ceasefire with Israel. This coincided with Abbas's desire to put an end to the Palestinian uprising. This will also pave the way for the roadmap for peace to take effect. However, if Hamas succeeds in de-escalating the security situation and in convincing Palestinian armed groups to commit themselves to the cooling-off period, it still cannot guarantee that Israel will abide by it. And Israel's return to its policy of assassinations is proof of that.
Attention has been directed more than ever at the trial of former President Saddam Hussein and his aides accused of being responsible for the massacre of Dujail. This is especially true now that Judge Rashid Rauf Abdel Rahman was recently appointed to replace his predecessor, Judge Rizgar Mohammed Amin. Amin tendered his resignation in protest of what he called governmental interference in the judicial system. Meanwhile, Judge Rauf Abdel Rahman adjourned the last court session over which he was meant to preside last Tuesday in Baghdad after being searched by the U.S. forces, an act that left him very upset. So who is Judge Rashid Rauf Abdel Rahman? His biography will be highlighted in a report by our correspondent.
يعتبر القاضي رؤوف رشيد عبد الرحمن الذي كلف رئاسة محاكمة الرئيس السابق
Judge Rashid Rauf Abdel Rahman, who is presiding over former President Saddam Hussein's trial, is considered one of the strongest defenders of human rights. This is especially true with respect to the Kurdish village of Halabja, which was hit by a poison gas attack on orders from Saddam, causing nearly 5,000 civilian deaths within minutes.
رؤوف رشيد عبد الرحمن عام 41 وتلقى دروسه الابتدائية في هذه البلدة قبل أن ينتقل إلى مدينة السليمانية لدروسه الأعدادية ويتخصص في القانون في كلية حقوق
In addition to wounding and maiming tens of thousands of others. Judge Rauf Abdel Rahman was born in 1941. He attended elementary school in Halabja before he moved to the town of Al-Sumaria to complete his secondary education. Abdel Rahman attended law school at the University of Baghdad in 1959. In his fourth year of college, he was detained under political charges concerning his involvement in the Kurdistan Democratic Party, headed by the late Mullah Mustafa al-Barazani. He was a father to a young man and 3 young women when he was subjected to various forms of torture that would cause him permanent paralysis in parts of his body. In 1965, he was sentenced to life in prison in absentia until he was able to take advantage of mass pardon of political prisoners by the Iraqi government in 1967 and once again in 1976. After the Treaty of April 1970 between the central government in Baghdad and the Kurds, under the leadership of the late Mullah Mustafa al-Barazani, Abdel Rahman was nominated for membership in the Iraqi Lawyers Syndicate. He practiced law in Baghdad before moving to the town of Al-Sumaria 3 years after the Iraqi-Iranian War broke out. In 1984, Abdel Rahman was elected as representative of the law sector in Al-Sumaria, and in 1991 he became a founding member of the first conference for the Organization of Human Rights in Kurdistan.
وعين في عام 97 مستشارا في لجنة صياغة القانون في وزارة العدل في حكومة إقليم كردستان.
In 1997, he was appointed as a legal consultant for Kurdish affairs, after which he became the governor of Arbil. He also served as the chief judge of the criminal court in Arbil, after which he became deputy chief of the appellate court there. Abdel Rahman, who translated many of the legal terms from Arabic to Kurdish, has overseen and administered a number of elections that took place in the Iraqi province of Kurdistan.
الانتخابية التي جرت في إقليم كردستان العراق.
Israel's Islamic movement held a demonstration outside the Danish embassy today as part of continuing protests around the world against the publication of caricatures of the Muslim prophet Muhammad in European newspapers. Protests were also held in Jerusalem, Asia, and as far away as New Zealand. We get more on the escalating controversy in this report from IBA's Dennis Sin.
Demonstrations against the cartoons depicting the Muslim prophet Muhammad continue to sweep through the Middle East and countries around the world. Israel's Islamic movement held a demonstration outside the Danish embassy in Tel Aviv. Indignant Palestinian schoolgirls in East Jerusalem called on the Arab countries to cut off oil supplies to the west. And in Gaza City, youngsters holding Hamas and Fatah flags demonstrated outside the local European Union offices. They chanted, "Down with Denmark, down with Norway, and with our blood we will redeem our prophet." Riots erupted in the Muslim-dominated Indian province of Kashmir, where demonstrators also vented their anger by chanting slogans and burning the Danish flag. Similar protests took place in Thailand, Afghanistan, Iran and Egypt. The Lebanese security forces remained on high alert as clashes continued in Beirut, near the Danish embassy, which was torched yesterday. At a press briefing this morning in Brussels, European Commission members issued a statement condemning the Muslim violence in the strongest possible terms.
The Commission is aware that the cartoons published in European media have aggrieved many Muslims all over the world, but no grievance, perceived or real, justifies acts of violence such as perpetrated on the weekend.
Meanwhile, the Danish government today warned its citizens not to travel to some 14 countries in the wake of the Muslim outrage over the cartoons. The countries listed are Afghanistan, Algeria, Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Jordan, Libya, Morocco, Oman, Qatar, Sudan, Tunisia, and the United Arab Emirates. The communique also suggests limiting travel to Yemen and Syria. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss the continuing uproar in the Muslim world is former Director General of the Foreign Ministry and Ambassador to Turkey, Dr. Liel. Dr. Liel, thanks for coming in this evening.
Good evening.
Many Islamic experts have been discussing the notion of the clash of civilizations for some time now. Is this what we're seeing here?
I think yes. I think that the world is physically shrinking, but the gap is growing, I think, standard of living and in the mentality. So people are more aware on what's happening with the other, but they understand less and less. And I think we should make a bigger effort to understand each other. We have to work harder to put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we really don't understand.
What accounts for the reaction, some would say overreaction, intensity of the reaction from the Muslim world?
I don't think it's overreaction. I think demonstrations are better than terrorism, better than suicide attacks. I think demonstrations are all over the Western world, and we have here demonstrations that sometimes are overreacting and get violent. So I prefer demonstrations to terrorism. I think we had a difficulty, we still have a difficulty, and we are very close to the Palestinians, very close physically to the Hamas, to understand sometimes how they're really offended. You cannot orchestrate such all over the world demonstrations.
Tehrani citizens have staged demonstrations in front of Danish embassy in Tehran Monday in protest to the sacrilegious move of several European newspapers against Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad. Demonstrators condemned the indecent move by Western papers, especially the Danish ones. The rising angry protest prompted the police to step in and prevent them from approaching the embassy compound, a move which resulted in minor injuries of several demonstrators. The embassy was vacant at the time of the sit-in. One of the demonstrators present outside the building said, as long as the Danish government has not apologized to the world Muslims, we will continue the protests along with other Muslims worldwide. Earlier in the day, also a crowd of students demonstrated outside Austria's embassy in Tehran to vent their anger at the publication of profane cartoons by certain European newspapers. They chanted Western democracy is a lie, demanding an apology from European leaders for the insult on Islamic sanctities. In a statement, the students said arrogant states have launched yet another attack following Shiites' victory in Iraq, the electoral triumph of Hamas in occupied Palestine, and the questioning of Western taboos by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Meanwhile, Iranian Trade Ministry announced it will impose a ban as of Tuesday on the imports of Danish goods or those commodities destined for Iran from Denmark. Trade Minister Masoud Mirqasemi said on Monday any trade talks or agreements with Danish parts will be suspended and any unfinalized deals will be revoked. Global protests over cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad escalated on Monday, with 5 demonstrators killed in Afghanistan, Lebanon and Somalia. Nearly 3,000 people demonstrated Monday in Algiers in protest against the publication in European newspapers of caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad.
In Afghanistan, the demonstrators marched through the city and attacked the Danish embassy with stones. Protesters in 4 cities of Indonesia demanded that Denmark apologize for the cartoons. Protesters also rallied peacefully in front of the Danish embassy in Thailand's capital. Bangladesh, meanwhile, asked the Danish government to express regret over the publication of the cartoons. Despite protests and boycotts across the Muslim world, the cartoons have now appeared in papers in Bulgaria, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Jordan, Spain, Switzerland, Hungary, Australia, Norway, Poland, and New Zealand.
Iranian Foreign Ministry called on the foreign ministers of the Islamic nations to hold a crisis meeting to review the insulting cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad by some European newspapers. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Hamid Reza Safi also said the remarks made by the European heads over the measure are equivocal and not enough. Safi added Iran is suspicious of the intentions of the Western states in printing the cartoons. This is while Iranian Foreign Ministry summoned Hungarian Chargé d'Affaires to Tehran to voice its protest over the insulting cartoons.
At one of the theaters in London, an English play is being shown. The performers are Iraqi actors who speak the Arabic language. During the performance, also Arab musicians play Eastern music. The story is dominated by politics, addressing the conflict in Iraq and the Middle East, and the ways that East and West have met. The producer of the play hoped to show it first in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad.
The Red House in the Iraqi city of Sulaimania is where the play's producer decided to set the scene for the soldier's tale. There, he auditioned Iraqi actors and held rehearsals before going to London. The Red House used to be a place where forces of the former regime detained and tortured prisoners. These scenes are transferred to the Oldwick Theatre in the capital of England. This wooden stage will, for some time, host the first play that will be presented in English and Arabic, inspired by the war on Iraq.
Right. I think my first reaction was fear and anxiety, especially because my understanding about Iraq and the Middle East was different than what I discovered. The goal of the play is to eliminate any negative views on both sides.
المسرحية كناية عن أوبرا لإيغور سترافينسكي وكتبها تشارلز راموز وقد عرضت عام 18 وهي ترويج.
The play's score is a composition by Igor Stravinsky, and the play was written by Charles Ramos. It first debuted in 1918 and tells a fictional story about 2 soldiers who talk to Satan. The soldiers have long arguments and finally all come to an agreement about life and how the Prince of Darkness seduces the soldier. There's one Arab and one English actor who play the roles. Each of them speak their own language with Satan. In the end, they both realize that they are scared and that they share similar opinions and views.
It was hiding.
I'm sure that
I am sure that the good politicians who find themselves in the midst of this chaos are trying to resolve the problems for all of us, not just between the West and the Middle East, but among us all.
كل إنسان بالعالم متفق على قضية واحدة. متفق.
Everyone in the world agrees about one thing. They agree that each person is a brother in humanity, regardless of religion, countries, borders, or languages. What the 2 soldiers agree on is rejecting Satan and rejecting evil in general.
بيناتهم هم رفضهم للشيطان، رفضهم للشر بصورة عامة.
The British and Arab play producers believe that art is the best way to ease the tension between the people. They understand that Iraqis need to see the play as well, and they say that the play will be shown in Iraq as soon as possible.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities. And the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.